Hey everyone, this is Tom from VermiBag. Anybody that's watched any of my videos knows that I make a tremendous amount of this bedding material. I go through probably one of these 7-gallon or 8-gallon buckets, at least one a week, possibly 1.5 of these a week. So I'm always constantly making it up. So it's a good way for me to get rid of a lot of the shredded paper and all the newspaper, cardboard, and just miscellaneous items that we'd normally throw in the landfill. So my bedding that I add in my bins is normally moist. Unlike a lot of people add just strictly dry bedding. I add moist bedding, and then I add additional dry bedding if I need to, if I'm adding moisture-rich food into the bag. But I want to show you a quick, helpful hint on making this bedding. I have several videos on how to make it, and I've had a few people comment that the material was too wet and it was getting sour, and that is the case. If you put these things in a 5-gallon bucket and then leave it upright, like this one in the middle, let it sit there for a long time, all that moisture is going to go to the bottom, and the material will start to sour because of, I think, the alfalfa meal and different things that are in there. So I always constantly rotate them, and I store them most of the time upside down like this, for any excess moisture will leak out the bottom. Because ultimately you want this bedding moist. You don't want it wet, you want it moist. But I found another way that's actually much easier, and it's a really good way of storing this material, and it'll make it just the perfect consistency. This is an old Rubbermaid Tote from years ago when I actually had a Rubbermaid worm bin. So at the time I had put holes in the bottom and the sides of this thing with a screen over the top of them. So I'm going to take this material here and one of the rest of it in this bucket here and place it into this tote. I'm also going to add a little bit more dry bedding at the bottom. I have some shredded cardboard here. So I'll place a little bit of cardboard in the bottom and place a little bit of this material and then some more cardboard. This will let the material dry out a lot faster than it would in a bucket. But again, you don't want to dry out too much, but I think it'll retain the moisture pretty well in this tote, even with these holes in it. So let me throw some shredded cardboard in there, and then I'll dump some of the material in. Okay, so first I just added a really fine layer of shredded cardboard and newspaper in the bottom. Then I'm going to go ahead and dump the contents of this first bucket in there. Okay, so I added the contents of this bucket, so I have about, I suppose, 4 inches or so, or 5 inches of material in there now. This isn't too bad. This is actually about the right consistency. It's real moist. But I'll show you on this bucket. I'm going to flip it over, and then I'll pull the first part of the bottom out of it to put in here, and I'll show you how moist it is. It'll be probably a little bit on the wet side. Okay, so here's the contents of that other bucket after I flipped it over. And if you look at here in the bottom, there's still a lot of moisture in this. Even though I have it upside down, it's just draining out really, really slow. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a bunch of this in here. First I'm going to add another layer of this shredded newspaper and cardboard. That'll help absorb some of that moisture. Again, the bottom of this thing is perforated, so with the screens and stuff, so it'll be able to drain out real easily. Now I'm going to throw on about 4 inches or so of this wet bedding material. Okay, so I added about 4 inches of the bedding material there, and I can even tell on this it's a little bit sour smelling. It was pretty doggone wet. So again, now I'm going to add another layer of cardboard, shredded cardboard on here, and see if I can put the rest of this 7-gallon bucket in there. So there, I've transferred the contents of these 3 buckets that have probably been out here at least 3 weeks, and I've transferred it into these 2 10-gallon or 12-gallon totes. I'm not sure exactly how big they are, but so I'll continue to monitor these and just make sure they don't dry out too much. Again, you don't really want them real dry, but it's not going to hurt anything if they dry out. Just your bedding will be a little bit drier, and the decomposition process inside these bins will kind of stop if it dries out too much. But again, it's not going to hurt anything. But it's better to have them a little on the drier side than the wetter side, because they'll start to smell a little bit. They get sour, and it isn't that that's going to really hurt the worms, but that smell kind of sticks to your hands, and I don't particularly care for it. So that's all for now, folks. This is Tom from VermiBag. Ciao.